Welcome everyone. Today we're going to take a look at the basics of Excel. As you may already know, it is a very powerful tool across just about every practice. You can think of Excel as a digital version of grid paper with superpowers. At its core, Excel helps you organize, calculate, and visualize data. Some of the reasons it is so useful, and I would even venture mandatory, include organization. You can neatly arrange data in rows and columns, perfect for keeping track of budgets, inventories, or schedules, and much, much more. Calculation. Excel is like having a calculator with memory. You can automate math using formulas for everything from basic sums to complex financial models. Analyses. This is a big one. Functions like filtering, sorting, and conditional formatting help you make sense of large data sets very quickly. And on a similar note, visualization. With just a few clicks, you can turn raw numbers into charts and graphs, making trends and patterns easier to spot. Do you have a lot of repetitive tasks? Automation is next. Excel can help you automate them with features like flash fill, simple macros, or once you become a master, VBA scripting will take you beyond even the native functionality of the application, and you will be able to create custom solutions for just about anything. Today, however, we'll start with navigating the interface, entering data, including some shortcuts, as well as formulas and functions, formatting, including conditional formatting, sorting and filtering, data cleaning, tables, charts, and an introduction to pivot tables, which is more of an intermediate skill. When you open Excel, you can start a new blank workbook. A book filled with blank pages ready for your data. In Excel, pages are called sheets, and a new workbook typically starts with one sheet, but you can add as many as are needed. Each sheet operates independently, allowing you to manage different data sets, analyses, and reports all in one place, yet they can also work together, sharing data and insights. You can double-click to rename these sheets to reflect the content they hold, making it easier to navigate and to stay organized. In this case, I will rename Sheet 1 as Test 1 instead. The ribbon is your command center. It's organized into tabs like Home, Insert, and Formulas, very much like the other core Microsoft applications you are familiar with, such as Word. Each tab houses a group of related functions and features. For example, under the Home tab, you'll find the essentials for formatting text and cells, while the Insert tab lets you add tables, charts, and much more. The Formulas tab will become important as it will give you an overview of the common functions you will be using as subdivided by their various library groups. Using the functions from here initially can also help you learn their syntax. Data is where we can start retrieving, organizing, sorting, and also introducing automation into our workflows. Needless to say, learning to navigate the ribbon is the key to using Excel's full potential, allowing you to easily access a wide array of tools with just a few clicks. Of course, it is always recommended to explore as much as possible when learning a new application. Now, how do our sheets function? How are they organized? Let's click into Sheet 2, where we have some placeholder data. Rows run horizontally across the spreadsheet and are identified by numbers 1, 2, 3, etc. Columns, on the other hand, run vertically and are identified by letters A, B, C, and so on. Together, rows and columns create a grid system, making it easy to navigate and structure our data. Think of rows as individual records or entries, while columns represent the different data types or attributes of each row. Imagine each cell as the container that holds information. Cells are identified by their unique address, a combination of both of that column letter and that row number. For example, the cell located in row 2 of column E is known as E2, as we can see in the top left field. This simple yet powerful system allows you to organize, locate, and manipulate data efficiently because you can reference these addresses as part of your calculations and formulas anywhere in your workbook. Now, to stay organized, I will call this sheet Data 1, again, by double-clicking into its tab and typing that new name, pressing enter to accept the changes. Our data right now is all just plain text, and the formatting is a bit off. Before we move on, let's clean it up a little bit and assign it proper formatting so it becomes easier to work with. Step 1 is converting the data into a table. We can do so by selecting the entire data set known as a range and pressing the Control-T shortcut on our keyboard. Does the table have headers? Yes, it does. So we are going to leave that checkbox checked, and we're simply going to press OK. When data is formatted as a table, it instantly becomes more functional. Each column header allows for quick sorting and filtering, while formulas become easier to read and maintain through structured references. As you can see, our table also has a name. This is another way that we could reference this data set as an example. Tables also automatically expand as you add new rows, keeping calculations up to date without manual adjustments. Proper column formatting will add yet another layer of clarity and precision, displaying numbers as percentages, or in this case, where we have a currency, we can go to the Home tab and change the number format to currency. There you go. Or dates. Currently they are set to general, and I will go ahead and change this to a long date format. All of this ensures that your data is interpreted correctly. It's going to prevent calculation errors, and consequently, it's going to make the charts more intelligent and informative. Now, looking into column A, we can see that the font and the sizing and the spacing is a little bit off, and we want all of this formatting to be consistent. So if we click into cell B2, we can see we're using Aptos Narrow, size 11. If that is the case, again, I'm going to select my entire data set. I want to make sure it is in fact Aptos Narrow, size 11. And in this case, I want to make sure my alignment is also correct. So I will choose both of the name columns. That looks about right. We have left alignment and the text is middle aligned as well. I want my dates to be perfectly centered, and my numbers can stay right aligned in case additional digits are going to be added, which will change the length of that string, also known as text. As just mentioned, one of the benefits of converting the data to a table is that now we can sort on any of the columns. Clicking on the dropdown in our total amount bill header will give us a few options. In this case, I will choose largest to smallest. Of course, you can also click into any of the other headers. You can sort in alphabetical order or any other relevant metrics as needed. Navigating through Excel spreadsheets is straightforward, even when your dataset is significantly larger than our example. You can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move between the cells. You can use the tab key to move to the next cell in a row. You can use the enter key to move down to the next row, as you can see, and you can quickly jump to the edges of your data by holding down the control key and pressing an arrow in the direction you'd like to go. So for example, if I hold control and hit the right arrow key, we're going to go all the way to the right of our data set, to the left, to the top, and of course to the bottom. To enter data, simply select the cell and start typing. So here I'm going to type in Mike, pressing tab to move to the right, entering the last name, and then of course you would continue to insert your data as needed. To edit a cell, double-clicking is going to enter editing mode, and the cursor will be inserted where you are pointing. You can also click into a cell and hit the F2 key, which will also enter you into the editing mode. However, it will place the cursor at the end of your cell. Once you are inside of the cell and editing the text, you can use the arrow keys to navigate the text. And of course, holding the Shift key while using the arrow keys is going to let you select one character at a time in the direction you are pressing the arrows. Once you're done making your adjustments, you can hit the Enter key or the Tab key to exit editing mode. Now, of course, another way to edit your cells is via the formula bar. So currently, again, we have 69 hours for this particular entry. Let's change this one to 67 instead. So we can enter that. Again, pressing the Tab key is going to exit us out of the editing mode and also recalculate the new number. Entering unique data manually by typing is fine, but there is a better way for generic sequential data. In sheet number 3, I'm going to double click and title this one Autofill. Autofill lets you quickly fill adjacent cells with various types of data, including values, series, and formulas. For example, I'm going to enter a month. In the cell immediately below, I will enter a second month. This is to show Excel the pattern I would like it to follow. Now, I can select both of these cells, and by hovering over the bottom right corner until my cursor becomes a black plus sign, I can drag out the pattern, and Excel is going to fill the rest of that series for me. Now, of course, you can do this with days as well. You can do it with numbers, dates, so on and so forth. So don't waste your time manually typing these out. Use that autofill to really boost your workflow efficiency. An extension of autofill is flash fill, which will look to the left of our data and analyze a pattern. You can select a range of cells where you'd like the pattern to be replicated and simply press Ctrl E on your keyboard. So if that is the case, and I want to merge column C with column D, in column E, all I have to do is type in Monday 1, Tuesday 2. I've set the pattern. Now Excel knows that I want column C and D's data to be amalgamated. I can simply select the range at that point and press Ctrl E. It will automatically combine that data for me. Of course, using this method is not just for combining data, but also for extracting relevant data from much longer pieces of text, or strings as they are called. Formulas and functions are among Excel's most powerful features. Let's say we want to add the number of apples and bananas together. Every formula in Excel must start with an equal sign. We can type in equals 2 plus 1, and of course the answer is going to be 3. However, we can also use cell references instead. So what we're going to do is the exact same thing. We're going to start with that equal sign, except this time we're going to type in B2 plus B3, and you can see that it is highlighting the cells that we are referencing. When we hit enter, it's going to give us the exact same result. Of course, you may already know that you can also type in equals and then click into the cell so you don't have to type its reference, and then hit that plus sign and select the next cell. Hit enter, it's going to do the exact same thing. Now, as you've already guessed, as far as our basic arithmetic is concerned, we can type in equals, and then we can use the asterisk to multiply our numbers. We can use a / for division. And of course, we can use the minus to subtract. Now, when it comes to larger data, let's say we wanted to add the cost of all of our fruits together. It would be very inefficient to type in =, and then click into each of the cells and continue to add all of the numbers one by one. Instead, Excel also includes functions that simplify far more complex calculations. In this case, if we wanted the total, we can type in =sum. When we press tab, it will insert that function into our cell for us, and immediately below, it will tell us what parameters we need to enter. In this case, we need to enter number 1, which represents the range of our existing cost. In this case, we can click and drag and select all of those cells, which you can see is entering as B2 colon B8. So from B2 to B8, we can close that bracket to finalize the expression and press enter. Now that's all nice and well because we know that the sum function exists. But how do you find out additional functions that Excel supports? Well, as we looked a little bit earlier, clicking on the Formulas tab is going to give you the function library. And if you want to learn about all of the various functions that are available to you in Excel, you can simply click on their various groups. Here is the logical group. Here we have the financial group. And by just mousing over them, it will tell you what each of these functions is going to do. Under more functions, you're going to have your statistical, engineering, cube, so on and so forth. And if you don't want to go through all of these menus, you can also simply click into the Insert Function button. Shift F3 is the shortcut there. And you can type in a brief description of what it is that you're looking for. In this case, what I want is average. I'm simply going to type that out. There it is at the very top of the list. I'm going to press OK, and it's going to give me a user interface. Now, as I mentioned, until you learn the syntax of the various functions in Excel, this might come in really handy in teaching you how they work. So currently, we are doing an average on cell B2 to B9, which is not correct. B9 also includes our total value. So with this number selected, all we have to do is click and choose the correct range, which is again B2 to B8. The moment I let go of my click and drag my mouse, it's going to insert that new value. We don't have additional numbers. If we did, we could very simply click into number 2 and select that range as well. In this case, we just hit OK. And there is our average. Now, earlier we learned about how to designate our data with proper formatting. In this case, if we go back to the Home tab, under our number, we have additional functionality immediately below the dropdown. So in this case, we can decrease the decimal. And by clicking on that button continuously, we can bring it down to a whole number instead. Of course, we can also increase the decimal, which will take us in the opposite direction. So let's do the exact same thing for minimum. Again, I'm going to go to my formulas. I'm going to click on Insert. I'm going to type in min. There is my minimum right there. I'm going to choose my numbers, press OK. Minimum number is 1. And again, same exact thing. We're going to pretend that we don't know that we can type in =max. And we're simply going to find it on that list. It already knows kind of what it is that we're looking for. We can press OK and then again select our range. B2 to B8, press OK. Our max is going to be 5. Perfect. Now, when it comes to Excel formulas, there is one very important concept you must remember, and that is of relative versus absolute cell references. Normally, formulas use relative references, which means they move incrementally as you copy them. Allow me to demonstrate. So instead of having cost as a column here, let's assume this is actually basket 1 And these are just the numbers of fruits in each basket. Basket 2. Perfect. Now, as we recall, our total here is the sum of cell B2 to B8. If I use my autofill, now, because we have a relative reference, the incremental change follows our autofill. So because we're now totaling on column C, what we're looking at is the total of C2 to C8, which currently has no values. So that is what I mean by the incremental movement of the formula in the direction that you are filling, or autofilling rather. Now, an absolute reference is represented by dollar signs, and you may have seen these in existing Excel formulas. And essentially what an absolute reference refers to is locking the cells that are being referenced in place. That way, no matter where you move that formula to, it will always reference that same exact number. So if that is the case, let me get rid of basket 2 and we'll get rid of our new total there. And I'm going to click into my sum formula here. I'm going to select my 2 references and I'm going to press the F4 key. So what that did is it put a dollar sign in front of both the column and the row. That means it is locking the column and the row. And as you've probably guessed, you can in fact put the dollar sign just in front of the column or just in front of the row or any combination thereof. So now with this change in place, if I fill this across, our number is still 20. Because we've locked in those references, we're still looking at B2 to B8. And if I copy Control C and Control V to paste anywhere else in my sheet, it is going to continue to reference cell B2 to B8. Back to our data tab, we can see that again, we have a table. And there's a number of other things that we can do to change the look of this table. For example, from the Home tab, we can add borders to make certain elements in the table stand out a little bit more. And because we are dealing with context menus and because we have a table in front of us, we now have a table design tab as well. From here, we can make a variety of different adjustments. We can again change the look and the color of the table. However, if you really want to get visual, conditional formatting is going to come in particularly handy. So as an example, I'm going to highlight my total amount billed column, and I want to display this in a more easily identifiable fashion. So from the conditional formatting menu, I'm going to choose data bars. And I'll choose yellow just so it stands out a little bit. So this is going to give us a visual representation of the top billers, for example. I can also go down to icon sets, and this is more of a KPI metric, very much in line with what we just saw as far as the data bars are concerned. And of course, you can create your own rules and make adjustments based on the various thresholds. Any kind of modifications that you can imagine, you can probably apply to your data. Now, the other amazing thing about conditional formatting, for example, if we select our entire data set right here, we can go to highlight cell rules, and immediately as one of the presets is duplicate values. So we want to look at duplicate values, and again, here is the color that we are using to highlight said duplicate values. And even without applying this to our data, we can see that we have 2 rows here that are in fact completely identical. So now that we know that we have some duplicates that we need to remove from our data, are we going to manually click in there and delete those ourselves? Absolutely not. We're going to go to our data tab, and we have a remove duplicate button in our data tools. I'm going to click on that. I do want to run my duplicate removal across all of my columns, of course. And yes, my data has headers once again, so we will leave that checked on. And we're going to press OK. It has found 1 duplicate value as to be expected, and as we verified with our conditional formatting, and 15 unique. It has automatically gotten rid of that extra Jessica entry. We can press OK, and we are good to go. Now, speaking of visually representing our data, especially when it comes to presenting it to clients, for example, we may wish to take it a step further. And what I mean by that is we can go to the Insert tab, and from here we can insert a chart. Now, holding the Control key on my keyboard, I can select only the columns that represent the data that I am interested in this case, the first name and the total amount billed column. Immediately in the chart document group, we have our pie charts, we have our line graphs, we have our scatter charts, and if you're not sure which one to select, you also have the Recommend Chart button. This is going to allow Excel to recommend what it believes would look best and function best with the data that we have selected. So these are some of the top choices. I'm going to stick with the bar graph right here. Press OK. It's going to plug it into our document. And from here, we have a variety of different options. So in the top right of our chart, we can see we have a little plus button. If we click on that, we can select different labels and different X and Y axes elements. If we want to change the look of our chart, we can click on the paintbrush. This is going to let us change the style of the chart. You can see there's a variety of different looks, and there's an additional tab at the top for color. So we can change the color of the various elements in our chart as well. And if you want to further refine the chart, you have your filter button as well, which is going to let you select the various individuals or display something in particular, the way we are displaying Christopher right now as an example. Now, the perfect segue to leave off on that will carry us into the intermediate video that will follow this one is going to be pivot tables. A pivot table is like a Swiss Army knife for your data. It helps you to quickly summarize, analyze, explore, and again, present information in a sheet, especially when you're working with larger amounts of data. So again, I'm going to go back into the Insert tab, and I can select my data. I don't really have to. The moment I click on the Pivot Table button in the top right, it's going to identify our table for us. We can also again draw that range if we so choose. You have the ability to insert it into a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. I will keep it as new for this example, and I'm simply going to press OK. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to put a panel on the right side of our screen. There you can see all of the columns that we had in our table. And then we have 4 additional boxes at the bottom of this panel for filter, column, row, and values. And as you may have already guessed, you are very much able to click and drag the columns into the various boxes at the bottom. So for example, I might want to filter by name, and I want my row to be the matters, and I want my value to be the total amount billed. So now, again, I can filter and I can visually represent those numbers by simply going into my first name and selecting the name in question that I'd like to see. There is the matter. There is the billable total amount for Andrew. Now, as another slight little teaser, if I didn't want to do this manually every single time, I can also quickly insert a slicer for that first name. And now, with the slicer enabled, I can simply click and drag, select the candidates that I'm interested in. And as you can see in the name filter, it now says multiple items. I can click on just one to see only their numbers. Or again, I can click and select multiple people at the same time. And the last thing we might want to do is to print this sheet. Now, very quickly in the bottom right, we can click on the page layout view. And this is what our current table would look like if we printed it onto plain paper. So it's breaking across 2 pages. We don't want that. We can go back into our normal view. We can select all of our data. From the page layout view, we can set this as our print area. And now if we press Control P or go into our print preview, we have a number of different options we can use to scale this to whatever page that we like. So we might not want to print this on portrait paper, in which case we can click on the orientation and change it to landscape. If we had many columns, far more than we have currently, we might want to choose a different paper size, for example, tabloid. And then of course, we can choose to scale our data to however we want it to fit on the sheet. So in this case, I will go back to regular letter paper and I will choose portrait orientation. However, the scaling, I would now like to fit all of the columns on one page. Now, of course, if you want more custom settings, you can always click on the page setup button at the very bottom. You can choose to scale your data however you like to whatever percent that you might want manually until it fits just right in accordance with your margins. Speaking of margins, you have a margins tab, which will let you individually customize the top, left, bottom, the footers, so on and so forth. Speaking of headers and footers, there's also a tab available there. If you'd like to insert your DMS doc ID in the footer, for example, you have that option. And of course, finally, we have the sheet where you can change the print area if you'd like. You can choose to repeat rows at the very top, or you can repeat columns, so on and so forth. When you're happy, you can press OK and then hit print to send it to whichever printer that you'd like. I hope this workshop served its purpose as a high-level overview of some of the most common and heavily utilized features in Excel. You are now well on your way to mastering the basics, so keep practicing and exploring the interactions between all of these tools. Future additions to these series will help build upon this knowledge and take you towards Excel mastery. Thank you, and see you next time.